Man, I've played video games for a very long time. Like my first time playing a video game was on a Tandy 1000. And I played Ultima. So I've been around the block for quite a long time with video games. And I've seen the rise and I feel like a little bit of a decline in gaming where you just have buggy games, glitchy games. Games just aren't as fun as they used to be. They're becoming a chore. And so a friend of mine in Discord sent me this and said, hey, you need to watch this. This is from More Perfect Union. Private equity is coming for gaming.
If you've played a video game in the last year, you've probably seen something like this. Vampires in Redfall floating aimlessly in the sky. Starfield characters missing faces, and Hogwarts Legacy wizards falling through the ground into nothingness. While I can admit glitches.
Although I'm going to say Hogwarts was really fun. That was a really fun game, but there was bugs. Of course, lots of bugs.
Hilarious. They've also left me wondering, is this the new standard? Then, just this January, one of my favorite series, Deus Ex, a franchise that arguably transformed gaming when it was released in 2000, got canceled out of nowhere. And Deus Ex is not alone. In the last year, unprecedented numbers of games have been canceled, workers laid off.
That's true. There's been so many games that have been canceled lately, and it's just like, what's going on?
And studios shuttered. The teams that make Saints Row, Red Faction, and Deus Ex have all lost their jobs. Even studios that make huge.
And let me be clear, guys, and just saying that I don't want people to lose their jobs. I don't want studios to be shut down, but we have to hold things to a higher standard. And in my personal opinion, I'm going to see what he says, but I think the problem is you got these people in suits and MBAs and that just look at the bottom line. They don't look at what's the purpose of video games. The whole purpose of creating a video game is to create fun, right? And so that's the whole point of their jobs. They enjoy creating fun. And that has been lost in translation by the suits that run video game industries. And then that trickles down. I can't blame devs. I can't blame managers. I blame the people at the top. So let's hear what he says.
Games like Tomb Raider and Borderlands are being hit with downsizing. Now, you're probably thinking, Alec, there's a very simple reason for all of this. The economy is rough, video game sales are down, and tons of industries are laying people off. Do these companies have any other option besides tightening their belts or?
I mean, yes. Look at what Nintendo did. Nintendo knows how much it will kill the company culture, kill the morale of the company. And so he's like, hey, we're just not going to make as much money at the top because we want to keep all these guys around. Because if someone's in fear, if you're fearful of losing your job, you're not going to perform like you should. You're just not. And so creating that environment makes things worse because then you're going to have the good employees that are like, yo, I'm looking for a different job because I may lose my job in the next couple months. Then they're out and there's no one there to help establish the culture of the company. And so this is a huge problem. You're seeing it with big studios at Ubisoft. You're seeing it at EA. You're seeing it all over, man. And these guys at the top have to understand the thing that makes your company the best are the people with their boots on the ground. The devs, the community managers. These people are what can help make or break your game. And until you start to understand that, you're going to continue to have games just be all over the place like he's talking about. So
shutting down. I decided to find out for myself because things just weren't adding up. I mean, in 2023, American consumers spent $57 billion on video games alone. So
and keep in mind, guys, video games is a larger and more lucrative business than Hollywood, which is kind of crazy to say.
I started digging, and I discovered it is not the result of a tough economy. In fact, that's just a helpful cover story for what's really going on. To understand the present grim reality of the video game industry, we have to go back to the start of the pandemic. 2020 was a huge year for video games. As people were locked inside their homes, game sales skyrocketed. They skyrocketed so much, in fact, that investors started eyeing the industry as their next great cash cow.
Oh, yeah.
2021 is where you see the massive investment. When you look at a chart, it's like 2020, 2019, 2021. It's wild.
All those franchises hit by layoffs or closures I mentioned a bit ago, one thing ties them together. A huge video game conglomerate called Embracer Group. Emboldened by this once-in-a-lifetime
investment, people.
Embracer Group bought up studio after studio, including many I've already mentioned, makers of Borderlands, Tomb Raider, Deus Ex. They even bought the company that owns the board game Settlers of Catan.
Which is a great Game. I enjoyed that game.
And the workers at Embracer Studios were kind of excited.
I would say that there was a more positive reception.
That's Alex, a former mission designer at Embracer-owned Volition Games, which made Saints Row. Embracer wasn't the only studio with this business plan. Microsoft merged with Activision in 2022 and has been on its own consolidation push.
The biggest companies with the most sustainability and diversified revenue streams are buying up as much of the industry as they possibly can, seemingly in order to buy up talent and to buy up IP so that they can spin that off into as many profitable ventures as possible.
Which is what is killing the game industry. Because it's lost its soul. It's lost its creativity. It's lost its joy for making fun.
That's Colin, a game developer who did not work for Embracer, but has a unique claim to fame.
I was laid off twice in 1 year, yes. The big thing about game companies is when they become bigger, there is a certain amount of growth that those shareholders are expecting.
And to achieve that growth, game companies do a few things. They'll buy up studios to achieve a greater market share. They'll rush games that have no business being released at the expense of inhumane working hours for their staff. They'll cram in as many microtransactions as possible or chase whatever new monetization strategy their competitor is doing.
The video game industry consolidation is leading to less risk. You're gonna see less games that do new things, that are engaging with new ideas.
Which sucks for us. That's why everything seems like it's the same game with a different skin. That's what I'm worried about with Star Wars Outlaws. It feels like this is Red Dead Redemption and Assassin's Creed rolled up into a Star Wars skin. I hope it's not. I hope it's great. But
these gaming conglomerates are taking a page from Hollywood by milking established franchises for all they're worth.
how many times have we said this, guys? They've drove out the creatives. They've drove out the people that help make games or movies great, that are great storytellers, and they're going with these formulas just because they're only looking at the bottom line.
Beholden to shareholders, it's not enough to make a game that makes some money and pays its workers and leadership a decent wage. Shareholders expect constant growth. In other words, an unsustainable return on investment.
Bingo.
Things didn't start unraveling for Embracer until 2022.
Honestly, we didn't hear about the $2 billion deal until it fell through.
Embracer is a publicly traded company, but one particular investment partner helped continue their industry consolidation.
Embracer Group had a $1 billion investment from Savvy Games Group.
Savvy Games Group, for the record, is a giant in the gaming space. They bought huge stakes in EA, Take-Two Interactive, and spent over $4 billion alone to buy a mobile game company called Scopely. They're also an arm of the Public Investment Fund, the wealth fund for Saudi Arabia's royal family. Savvy's billion-dollar investment in Embracer happened in June of 2022, and shortly after, Embracer spent $395 million on the rights to Lord of the Rings.
And we still haven't got an awesome Lord of the Rings game. I mean, the last one we got was what, PlayStation 2? That's the last good Lord of the Rings game we had.
And bought another round of studios looking to grow their portfolio for their investors.
Savvy Games Group intended to invest another $2 billion in there, and that fell through.
Up until late last night, we had an amazing cash flow. I think that's history now, so it's not that relevant.
For undisclosed reasons, the deal with Savvy Games imploded, and Embracer's shopping spree was suddenly looking like a huge mistake.
But hey, this is business, and I know shareholders and other stakeholders.
Dude, that guy looks utterly defeated. I mean, he looks just defeated.
Expect me to win every battle. This was a big one. And we didn't win this one, but I'm sure we will win many of the future battles.
And that's where Embracer went bad.
We got like an email at like 9:05 or something for an 11 o'clock all hands meeting. The people from Gearbox thankfully just rip off the Band-Aid and we're like, yep, we're closing the studio. One of the guys who I think worked there since Volition opened was like, well, that's 30 years down the drain. It's hard to watch the thing you've been a part of for, you know, it probably
30 years. Think about that, guys. 30 years. of working their butt off to create something awesome. And it's gone. Poof. Why?
Probably a majority of his life just get destroyed, and through no fault of his own.
People who have been laid off from Embracer and elsewhere are devastated. They're seeing their industry crumble in a way that they haven't seen before. Last year, there were a little bit over 10,000 layoffs in the video game industry. 5,000 of those were through Embracer Group.
Guys, I mean, I used to want to be in the video game industry and want to be like a community manager and something like that. And yeah, I mean, with what I've seen in the last like 2 or 3 years in the industry, there's definitely, I don't even know if I'd ever want to go into that industry just because of the way workers are being treated.
Which is significant.
In a similar move, Microsoft ended up laying off 1,900 Activision and Xbox employees.
It's really, really hard for the people that have been laid off to find new jobs. They're in this pool now that, if we're counting last year, 20,000 people were laid off in total from last year to right now in a year and a half. People are unable to pay rent. They live in cities that they relocated to for these jobs, cities that are very, very expensive. They have families, they have medical conditions, they're losing their health care.
During the height of the pandemic, people like me, we used social distancing as an excuse to 100% Pokemon Snap or perfect our Animal Crossing island. They may have even convinced a few friends to pick up a game for the first time in years. Of course that wouldn't last. I still have not completed Pokemon Snap, and my Steam library is overflowing with games I don't have time to play anymore.
Any executive who actually understands business knew this was a bubble and could see this happening. And I think it, in the most generous reading possible, receded more than they thought it would. But I don't think a single person who ramped up a ton of hiring during the pandemic thought that they wouldn't have.
That's another reason is, you know, some of these companies got money for the pandemic, and so they overstaffed, and it's just poor management at the top again. And unfortunately for people like us, the average Joe, you know, we suffer.
Have to lay off a single person.
Whether you're angry about laid off workers, canceled games, or prematurely released games, Lars Wingefors, CEO of Embracer, laid out the logic behind it all.
Our overruling principle is to always maximize shareholder value in any given situation.
I think the goal of maximizing,
Basically, AKA, you don't matter to us, only money matters. That's the message they're sending right there. You don't matter, only money matters.
quarterly profits is really the death of any artistic industry. And that view on it where we have to absolutely maximize profit is the thing that is eating us alive right now.
One thing that kept coming up as I spoke to journalists and game developers is the question of institutional knowledge. The industry has, for years, been laying off workers once a game is completed. But some of the most revered games, like Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom, are made by studios that hang on to its workers, game after game, sequel after sequel. And I'd argue it shows.
In my first layoff,
that's it.
Now you've got 80 people who lost 40 people who now need to fill in all of those gaps among themselves and can't hire to fill those slots.
And that's, like we said, the morale is just destroyed in that company as well.
So you're either going to need to make a smaller project, a completely different project, or severely cut scope. And even then, you might not have all the tools that you had previously because now you've got giant knowledge gaps amongst your team.
With this recent round of layoffs being so severe, the problem won't just be that an experienced worker is gone from a specific studio. They might leave the industry altogether. Imagine how many more buggy launches.
I can't tell you how many people I've seen that have posted on their social media that they're probably done with the gaming industry, which is really sad to me because we're losing all the creatives like Hollywood has.
And failed promises are going to start popping up in games in 2 years when half the experienced people are gone.
Even when I was in college, people told me that the average time for people to spend in games was 5 years, and then people either burn out or find something different that doesn't crush them. And so now, what impetus do people have to stay when it was already risky? And
you know, it's funny because I had a really good friend that used to work for BioWare, and he worked on SOTOR, and he did some other stuff, you know, around Mass Effect and things like that. And you know, that's kind of where he moved out of because of the long hours and just how it was. You know, like it's a meat grinder, man. It's a meat grinder.
And now it's just even riskier.
Because of consolidation and mass layoffs, gamers are going to see a decline in good quality games. And maybe, pressed to find the little amount of investment that is out there, big studios will save money by crunching more projects, making more people work inhumane hours, and rushing more games that will inevitably get mocked mercilessly on the internet.
Oh yeah.
There is one check on this mad dash to appease shareholders.
Redfall looked so bad, I didn't even play it.
Unions. In March, Sega of America employees were the first group of video game workers at a major American company to win a union contract. They negotiated not just pay raises, but layoff protections. Workers at ZeniMax, makers of Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series, unionized in 2023. And while they're still at the bargaining table, they've already won concessions over the use of AI.
Unions aren't going to stop the layoffs tomorrow, but on an individual, like studio level, unions have helped people keep their jobs.
Unionizing would absolutely make for better games. For starters, right now, individuals have very little power, and whether or not you are actually replaceable, you're going to be seen as replaceable. To an executive, a game designer is a game designer. The amount of specialization involved between disciplines of design is not something that is understood at the corporate level. And in general, happier people, or at least people who are cared for and fulfilled in their basic needs, are going to be more effective at.
See, that's what we're talking about. They're talking about the morale, right? And so the only way that they know how to turn is to a union. Now, I think turning to a union has some good things, but it also has some bad. So it's going to be interesting to see how this will play out in the future for the video game industry, since some are going more toward the union role.
Their jobs, and a union is something that can absolutely help get people the basic dignity that they deserve in the workplace and in life.
As for myself, I'll probably never see the resolution of the cliffhanger from the last Deus Ex, purely because some executive didn't like the way it looked on a spreadsheet and fired everyone working on it. And when it comes to workers like Colin and Alex, well, they just want to make good games. In Colin's case, he's now working on indie games he loves.
I think if we are focused on making sustainable teams and making interesting art, the players will find it themselves. And if we are creating niches to be filled, then the niches will be filled.
That's true, 100%. If you make good games, people will find them and people will play them. It's as simple as that. It's all about making fun. If you can make fun, then you've succeeded. That's the end goal of making a video game, is to make fun, and people that play it will say, this game is just fun.
Make sure to like and subscribe, or we will execute Order 66. Check out our other videos on the screen as well.
Yes, my lord. Bastard!